Hello, precious people of the earth. Thank you so much for tuning in again. I am so excited to be here with you all. Today, we are going to be having a bit of a delicate discussion. It is a discussion that is normally looked at as taboo. It's something that I talk about regularly and I'm very open about, but it's not something that is necessarily respected in the way that it should be. We are going to be talking more about mental health and diving a bit more in depth. So, to start off, I have been very open about the things that I experience and deal with regarding my mental health. Now, I experience anxiety and I have for quite some time. Recently was diagnosed with OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. Now, with my instance and the things that I experience with OCD has much to do with diseases and feeling as though there's something wrong with me internally and feeling as though there is something that has complicated my health without my knowledge. And that is pretty much something that I've dealt with for years. It's something that has been a regular aspect of my day. I wake up and the anxiety is there. Now, for my experience, it has been due to a chemical imbalance. So logically, I know what makes sense. I know what is right from wrong. I know what thoughts don't align and don't correlate with the facts and what I know about my health, but there's something that is chemically imbalanced within my mental capacity that makes me believe that something still is wrong, even though there's a whole layout of facts that say there's nothing wrong, that there's a complete bill of health, but for some reason that thought still comes to my mind. And so in my experience, that has turned into a revolving door of anxiety, which then links to depression. Now, in some cases, it'll be depression first and then anxiety, but with my experience, it has been anxiety first, which then has led to depression. And in my experience of depression, it has been a newfound thing that I have come about to recognize and understand. In my experience, it's more so been just the stressors of dealing with the anxiety, trying to understand the anxiety and really getting to the root of it for most of my life. But once I finally came to that understanding that it might just be a chemical imbalance, then there was a matter of addressing that and coming to terms with that and realizing that there's nothing wrong with me, so to speak. It might just be something that, there's a little wrinkle in the blouse, and that's something that I had to learn to be okay with, not necessarily accept it in the sense of saying that I will never be healed or never experience restoration in my mind, but just a matter of recognizing that that is something that may come about, that is something that I might deal with, that I might experience, and it's a matter of me learning to cope with that and learning to be aware and cognizant of those things that I might be experiencing and how to address it properly. And so with that, there has been a journey that has gone along with that recognition and understanding. And in those moments, there were some frustrations that came about and some, how do you say? ¿Cómo se dice? Anger? Maybe that's the right word. I'm not too sure. In my experience, there was a bit of anger. I felt as though I had done everything right my entire life to be this perfect image of who God wanted me to be, who my parents wanted me to be, who everyone else around me wanted me to be. And in that experience, I started to feel like, woe is me. Why is this happening to me? I do everything right. I'm a good girl. I dot my I's. cross my T's, dot my I's, my P's and Q's, all the letters of the alphabet. Your girl was doing it right, okay? So there was a bit of frustration when coming to these terms and understanding that this is part of my construct. This is just my build. This is an element of Frizzell. And that is what caused the depression. The enemy tried to instill thoughts of unworthiness and fear of isolation and fear of unacceptance. And so that also added to the depression. Now, in my experience of depression, it was dark. It was very heavy. It felt like me and my sister, we have this sweatshirt, this very large sweatshirt. It's several X's in front of the L, and it consumes you when you wear it. And as you wear it, it seems to get slouchier. It seems to get more, it becomes more than you. So the sweatshirt becomes so big and so exaggerated that it's like exhausted. And we started to call that the depressed sweatshirt. And literally, that is how the depression feels. It feels as though there is just something weighing you down. It feels so heavy. It feels like you're dragging the sleeves of the sweatshirt around the house. Like you can't cope. You can't figure out what your next move is without feeling that sensation of exhaustion and feeling that heaviness and that weight just bearing down on you. And so in my experience, it became very dark. It became very I don't even know the words. It became very hard to adapt to the depression. I had started to understand the anxiety and realize, wow, this has been going on my entire life. So now this is going to be what I experience for the entirety of my life, for the rest of my days. And that became a bit overwhelming for me. And so in those instances, I started to feel those feelings of not wanting to do it anymore. And I'm going to be very candid with you and very open with you, because this is stuff that society doesn't want you to talk about. This is stuff that we're not allowed to express, stuff that is considered taboo, and stuff that you just keep to yourself. And that's why a lot of people end up no longer with us on this earth. So that's why I want to be open about it. I want to share my experiences and let people know that there's so many of us out there feeling these same exact things, but yet society and tactics of the enemy have us to believe that we're the only ones experiencing it, that there's something wrong with us, that there is something that is not right with us, that we can't be accepted by others because we have these issues. And that's just simply not the case. There's so many people experiencing depression and anxiety and thoughts of not wanting to be on this earth anymore, and they're further silenced because of the connotations that have been attached to what it means to be depressed, or what it means to have anxiety, and what it means to just not feel well mentally. It's no different than if you have to go to the doctor annually for your physical. That's normalized, and that is looked at as something that you should do. You need to make sure that you are healthy physically each year. But when it comes to your mental health, there's not necessarily talk about how you're feeling each year annually, which mental health is something that should be checked on more than just once a year. I feel that it should be looked at every day. You have to have your self-check-ins every day, because we're constantly changing, we're constantly evolving, emotions are fleeting. There's so many things that can impact the way that we're feeling and internalizing the things that happen to us. So why isn't mental health just as important as physical health? And that's why I'm here. I'm here to talk about these things that no one wants to talk about, that people feel uncomfortable talking about, that people have shame talking about. It's not a matter of glorifying it, it's a matter of bringing it to the light. Because at the end of the day, the enemy is the one that wants to keep us isolated. The enemy is the one that wants to keep these topics of conversation in the dark, because then he wins. And that's not what we're doing here. So in my experience of depression, it did evolve, and it did become more than just feelings of not wanting to get up in the morning and brush my teeth. It did evolve to be more than just not wanting to take a shower. It was the feelings of not wanting to be here, not wanting to do it, because the thoughts came about of, what's the point? What's the point if life is gonna hurt this much? If I'm going to be this uncomfortable, if I've already been so uncomfortable my entire life, the trauma that I've experienced, the pain that I've experienced has been extensive, and it continues. It continues and continues. And I'm sure so many people can relate to that. So what do you do when you get to that point of feeling as though you can't do it anymore? In my experience of feeling that I couldn't do it anymore, I do believe that I began to self-medicate. Now, in those instances of doing so, I did not recognize that that's what I was doing. Wine has been something that I have enjoyed in my lifetime, and to my dismay, I believe that wine became something that I used to not feel the anxiety, to not recognize the anxiety or see it for what it was. The anxiety that I experienced would be pounding on my head day in and day out. It was so loud. It was so overwhelming. It was something that I never had a break from. And at a certain point of my life, I do believe that I began to drink wine, not consciously realizing what I was doing, but in those moments, I was not thinking about any of the pain that I was experiencing in my mind. And that did create an unhealthy habit. Now, once recognizing this and understanding that that is what was happening, self-medicating, once I realized what I was doing, I realized that there was something even deeper. There was a deeper issue than just having everyday anxiety. It became something that was consuming. It became my life. I couldn't function without thinking of the fears that I had, or the worries that I had, of whatever I was concerned about. And it was exhausting. And finally I did my research and realized that there's something that might need to be addressed. And that is when I went to my doctor and I told him, here's what's going on. I'm going through some things that are uncomfortable, and they have been going on for my entire life. And I believe that I do have OCD. Now, once the doctor addressed that and he acknowledged what I was saying, he was in agreement. And so then I was told to take a medication that would help balance this chemical imbalance. And I will say that in those moments of having that medication, it did help. Now, medication, it can be helpful. God put people on this earth that have the knowledge to know what medications need to be prescribed. And there are medications that are helpful. And I will say that the medication that I was placed on was very helpful. I felt a clarity. I felt something lift. And I felt a clearness in my mind that I had never experienced in my life. I felt a sense of control over what I was thinking. And I felt as though I was no longer bound by the anxiety. But with the medication came side effects. And those side effects had to do with weight gain. Now, personally, my biggest fears in life would have to be the fears of diseases, being unhealthy, and becoming overweight. That is just something that I have always struggled with. And it's been something that I've always been self-conscious about. And so I took that very seriously when it came to my health. And I took my weight as a matter of something that I could control by working out, by eating healthy, by watching the things that I consume, and being very diligent and self-disciplined. But whenever I was placed on this medication, I lost that bit of control. And unfortunately, even with the efforts of trying to do my best, that medication became more powerful than my self-discipline and my will to remain physically healthy. And unfortunately, I did end up putting on excess weight. Now, in those instances, I didn't necessarily understand how far it was going, because in those moments, I was just trying to experience relief from the anxiety that I had had my entire life. So, once realizing that that was happening, I wasn't sure if it was the medication or if it was just me not feeling well, me emotionally eating, me being depressed. It was a mix of everything. The medication, the depression, the anxiety was getting better, but yet life was overwhelming. I had been experiencing unhealthy environments within my life, whether that be home or work, and it was all too much. It was so overwhelming, and my health was in jeopardy. There were so many things that were coming at me back and forth, and it began to take a toll on me even further. So then my doctor prescribed something else, and after that I was rolling down the hill, literally, because I had gained even more weight. And once I realized what was happening, I was looking in the mirror and I was noticing, you are gaining weight in areas that you don't gain weight. Why is there meat in that area when there's normally not that much meat in that area? That doesn't make sense. I know my body. And something was not right. And so when I noticed that, I said, absolutely not. And I completely stopped the medication. I was so frustrated. I was so mad. I was so upset because it was happening before my eyes in slow motion. I saw what was happening and I couldn't do anything about it because my mind was tired. I was exhausted. I didn't know what to do. So once stopping that medication, I began to experience something that I never thought I would endure. I did not have a dependency on the medication. I didn't feel that I needed it, but my body had created and developed a dependency. So once removing that medication came withdrawal. That came with increased anxiety, the depression flooding back in all at once, dizziness for days upon days upon days, lethargy, hormones out of control. It was so much to take in. And in those moments, I realized that I had to make a decision, and I had to decide what was more important to me, my mental health or my physical health. And in that instance, I was baffled that people would have to make that decision, even in the midst of feeling those feelings of depression, anxiety, physically unhealthy, feeling not themselves. It was amazing to me that there are so many people in this world that probably are faced with those questions of what is more important. Do I want to be mentally healthy or physically healthy? But I made the decision that I wanted to be both. Now, I had a moment of weakness where I felt as though this is too much. This pain, this withdrawal, it's uncomfortable. My body is used to this medication. My doctor told me to take this medication, and now I feel like the bottom of a shoe because I decided not to take the medication. And in my research, I have found that within 24 hours, it would be easier to just take the medication, start taking it again, and immediately begin to feel better. And that's whenever I understood how painful it must be for people to make that decision of whether or not they're going to continue to use and consume what controls them. Because you do feel helpless in those moments. You don't know what to do. That instant feeling of relieving yourself from that pain is all too tempting, especially when you already have so many other pains that you've been experiencing your entire life. But in that moment, I had to make a decision, and I had to ask myself if I wanted to be bound by yet another source of control. The anxiety had controlled me my entire life. Then it was the depression, and then it was the medication. And I realized the enemy is he continues to pile it on. But at some point in time, I had to stand up and say, no more. We're not doing this anymore. The anxiety may be there, the depression may be there, but I'm taking control of my life, and you can too. And it all comes with understanding what it is you're dealing with. The psychoeducation of all the things that we deal with mentally. Our mental health is important. Our mental health matters. And at the end of the day, it all has to do with what the root of the issue is. You can take the medication. Sometimes it is necessary. It is important. But at the end of the day, we have to remember that there is still an underlying issue that requires nurture. The deepest, darkest things that we are experiencing, the demons that torment us, they're still there at the end of the day. And it's up to us to take our power back from the enemy and say, no more. We're going to fight this. We're going to get up every day, regardless of how uncomfortable it is, regardless of how much it hurts. And remember that there is a God that loves us, and there's a God that has given us the strength to overcome anything that the enemy tries to put on us. And that is where I found my strength, in those moments of realizing that I had been controlled and bound by external factors my entire life. And I finally realized that I don't want to be controlled by anything else. I don't want to be held back by the enemy's tactics. It's often easier said than done. But I think in those moments of recognizing that I had a choice of being a slave to the disorder, being bound by the medication, I realized that I have the power too. I have a choice. I have a choice to fight for me. I have a choice to fight for my mental health. I have a choice to be an advocate for not only others, but for me as well. And yes, I'm uncomfortable. Yes, I may be in pain at times. Yes, I may be afraid. But with my Heavenly Father, that is where I find my peace. And that is where I find my comfort. And that is why I am here. To provide this awareness for the things that society doesn't want to talk about, for the things that many people on this earth don't want to address because it's uncomfortable. In a sense, I do believe that awareness provides relief. The more you know, the more you understand, the easier it is to address the things that you are experiencing. That has been one of the biggest coping mechanisms for me in this time of understanding my mental health and understanding who I am and what I need. So as we are on this journey together, I encourage you to do your research. Become aware of what it is you're experiencing. If something is wrong, if you feel like something is wrong, it's okay. It's okay to not be okay. Even though many of us have been told different our entire lives. It's okay to not be okay. You are strong, and you can conquer this. Just as I am on the journey to conquer the things that I have dealt with regarding my mental health, you are strong as well. And it's something that we can achieve together. So, I thank you for watching. I thank you for having a listening ear and responding in love. There are so many people in the world that are experiencing deepest, darkest secrets that no one would ever even guess. And it's all because you can't see it. Mental health is not always something that can be seen just with a glimpse. So I challenge you to look deeper whenever you're speaking to people in your day-to-day lives. When you ask someone how they are, truly ask them how they are and mean it. Wait for their response. See if they need something further than just a, "How are you? Oh, good to hear." Lend a helping hand. Lend a shoulder for someone to cry on. Be that advocate for the person that is next to you, because mental health is something that impacts so many of us in society. And the person that you care the most about could be struggling with something that is unseen, that you would never have guessed. And so I encourage you to be that ear and that shoulder for people. Be kind and respond in love. I thank you all so much for tuning in today. I thank you for listening. I thank you for being present. And I cannot wait to see you in the next video.